Hello and welcome to another playoff edition of the NBA Outlet presented by OTGBasketball.com. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at OTGBasketball. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me today, Kory Waldron. What's up, Kory?
Hey, Nick. How you doing? Glad to be on another edition of the pod. Just ready to talk some playoff hoops. How you been, man?
I'm doing well. It's nice to have you on. Quick shout out to Kory in Harris's absence. Him and Jonathan have been great filling in. It's obviously great to have a staff that has guys that can podcast and write. So quick shout out to Kory. Let's talk some playoff hoops. Rockets and Spurs last night. Big game, definitely fun. A lot of interesting stuff, a lot of interesting storylines. Manu with a big block, Harden with the turnovers. Initial thoughts about that game last night?
Initial thoughts. First thing that pops up to me is the fact that the Rockets only played 7 players. They played with some really small lineups. You can tell that they desperately miss Nene. Seeing Ryan Anderson play center and James Harden play the power forward with Patrick Beverley and Lou Will on the floor as well at the same time. It's really weird seeing that kind of a small lineup, but that's kind of how this generation of basketball is now becoming. On the flip side, Kawhi went down with an ankle injury late in the game. Manu Ginobili turned the clock back about 5 years and was phenomenal in the fourth quarter and overtime. Danny Green was phenomenal. The Spurs really just used their experience to win that game at home over a worn-out and tired Houston team.
Yeah, I thought you made a great point when you pointed out the Nene absence is, they have to play Ryan Anderson as a backup now. And you mentioned they only played 7 guys. And I think fatigue definitely hurt them late in that game. Obviously, they didn't really do much on offense to stand around and watch Harden. And I think Harden was also fatigued. You mentioned it having to guard Gasol, Aldridge down in the paint. He's not the same size as these guys. He's given up a lot of weight and a lot of height. So he's fighting hard down there. He's obviously playing a lot of minutes too. And I think that impacted him late in that overtime.
Yeah, it seemed like almost on every drive, he just looked sluggish. You could just tell. And even that last shot, it was one of those shots where your superstar has to take the shot. But ideally, after he's already played 43 minutes, like you said, he was battling with Aldridge and Gasol all game. There wasn't any legs underneath that shot. He barely got off the ground. It was an easy block for Ginobili.
Yeah, exactly. If you actually watch the block, like Ginobili's like blocking from on top of the ball. And obviously we know Harden's a better athlete, especially at this point in Mano's career. So I ask you, do you think some of that loss falls on D'Antoni, obviously only playing 7 guys, not having someone kind of relieve Harden a little bit more and kind of game planning a little bit better? And we mentioned Kawhi got injured. He didn't play overtime. So the Spurs' best player, clearly their best player, you could even argue he's kind of like the same level of impact as Harden for the Rockets, missed the overtime, and you still lose.
Yeah, it's Houston. Houston should be a little bit worried. Like, I'm not worried, but I don't know why D'Antoni isn't playing guys like Sam Dekker and Montrezl Harrell.
And Dekker played a little in Game 4.
Yeah, and I mean, and for the most part this season, both those guys were big contributors because Nene wasn't playing a ton of minutes during the regular season.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe you don't use them because it's playoffs. And I know Dekker was hurt to end the season, so maybe you're not confident that he's fully healthy, or maybe he's just not in game speed. But the more you don't play him, the less likely it is that we see him.
Yeah, and this is probably one of the holes in their roster too. Not having another option, another big to put in there. Because even Montrezl Harrell and Ryan Anderson, they're not big guys. Like, they're not going to match up great with Aldridge and Gasol. So, this is an issue for the Rockets, and they have to kind of game plan the way to, deal with this in a different way.
I agree, especially when you have got the one thing San Antonio has is they have size between Dedmon, who didn't play a lot last night, Gasol and Aldridge, and even David Lee to that point. They have big bodies down low,
and they're skilled guys too.
Big men against Clint Capella for the most part. So you have 3 to 4 possible power forward centers against one center. It's, honestly, the worst scenario for Houston would be if Capella gets into foul trouble in Game 6.
Yeah, and Capella has played great too. It's just, like you said, it's a problem. There's only one Capella, and there's 4 other guys on the Spurs. And that was kind of apparent yesterday. The Spurs won the rebounding battle, 65-58. The Spurs also won points in the paint, 56-42. So getting those easy baskets definitely helps. We know the Rockets are going to shoot more threes. But, in overtime, you could tell working the ball down low was a lot easier than having to, shoot all those threes.
Yeah, and a shout out to Patty Mills too. I was really concerned when Tony Parker went down, especially because Tony Parker seemed, at least this year, when he was playing at the Tony Parker that we saw during the championship years for the Spurs were really dangerous. That game against Memphis, he was phenomenal. Before he got hurt, he was playing phenomenal. And Patty Mills, he was extremely good last night. He was hitting it from deep. He was facilitating. He was aggressive.
He was aggressive on D too. He was really getting into it.
Honestly, last night's win for the Spurs, it wasn't about Kawhi. It wasn't about Aldridge. It wasn't about Gasol. It was about those role players, Green, Simmons, Mills. All those guys played crucial minutes last night.
Yeah, honestly, that was the next point I was going to touch on is, you mentioned Patty Mills, but Danny Green hit a ton of big shots. He hit big threes in overtime. Jonathan Simmons was great. He forced those 2 late turnovers on Harden. So, that's definitely been some added juice for them. And another point you touched on earlier was the inexperience of the Rockets compared to the Spurs championship pedigree. And, the Rockets had 16 turnovers while the Spurs only had 8. And that's a big difference in a playoff game, especially when you're, down to the wire in OT.
It's a huge difference. And, Patty Mills and Jonathan Simmons, I tweeted this a couple of times last night. Both those guys are going to get big contracts this offseason because so many teams can use a guy who can play defense, can use a guy who can shoot, and those guys have been phenomenal for Pop.
Yeah, there definitely has been some rumor mill about that. There's been talk about Patty Mills possibly getting a chance to start somewhere in the league. And then Simmons, I know he was going to make money going to the offseason, but that number just went up a lot with the play he's had, especially in the moment and against big-time players like James Harden.
Even though he did shoot very poorly that second half.
Yeah, he's not, he's not a fine.
It is what it is.
Yeah, he's not a fine-tuned offensive player quite yet, but he does have the athleticism, and he's going to bring that energy and that defense. So how do you feel about the series going forward? Do you think, the Spurs are going to steal this, or the Rockets are going to come back and take the series?
I still have faith in the Rockets, only because, and I'm not gonna overhype the Kawhi injury, but I still believe Houston has the advantage. You still don't have Tony Parker, and you still have to rely on guys like Danny Green, Patty Mills, Ginobili, and Simmons to give you the performances they did last night. And not that it's impossible. I'm not sure if they can keep up that high level of basketball. And if Kawhi is, a little bit hobbled, D'Antoni has to go deeper on his bench for sure. The Rockets.
Yeah, no, I think upon having to go deeper on the bench, he just needs to have somebody else create the offense a little bit more and, let Harden rest. Because sometimes, he's going down the floor, he's running the offense by himself, he's creating everything, and he's setting everybody up in place. It's obviously going to get tiring. And I think the point you pretty much were making is, who would you rather bet your money on, the Rockets role guys or the Spurs role guys? And the Rockets role guys have been better all year long, and especially if you have a banged-up Kawhi, not saying he's going to be, super injured, but he's not going to be 100%. So I feel pretty good about the Rockets. I'd probably go about 50-50 in Game 7. So I'll stick with my pick, Rockets in 7, but I'm a little nervous.
One thing I want to point out, too, is Eric Gordon and Lou Williams, they went 1 for 11 last night shooting threes.
Yeah, and
that 2 big-time 6-men of the year candidates. The odds of them both shooting that poorly from deep is unlikely again.
Yeah, either of them really have had a great series, so hopefully in Game 6, Game 7, they can really turn it on. And that would kind of give an added element to the Rockets and ease some of the pressure off James Harden. But on to another series, the only other series going on right now, the Wizards and Celtics. This one's been fun. Plenty of bad blood. The Wizards bounced back, tied this up 2-2. John Wall's been a monster. IT was a little bit quiet in Game 4. What do you expect tonight?
I wanna roll with Boston being at home, but I picked Washington to win this series in 6, and I think this is the road game that Washington takes. Because, the playoffs really don't start till you win on the road. And I think this is going to be the first time we see a team win on the road in this series. I'm rolling with John Wall. I'm rolling with Beal. I just don't trust the supporting cast of the Celtics besides Isaiah Thomas. Al Horford's been solid, but Jay Crowder and Avery Bradley, there's these guys it makes me wonder why Danny Ainge wanted to hold on to Crowder so badly and Bradley when these guys produce offense for themselves.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. You mentioned, the supporting cast stepping up. Last game in game 4, Bradley only had 5 points, Horford 11. IT didn't even have 20. So I think they need that Isaiah Thomas, Horford, Bradley combo to at least get 50 points. And I don't think that's a lot to ask. And that's kind of the number they need to get around. And you made a great point. I think this kind of postseason has been a little bit sour for Boston fans, knowing that they could have had Paul George or Jimmy Butler right now and possibly have a chance to beat the Cavs in the next round. But instead, it looks like Washington's going to bounce them out, because I feel pretty confident about Washington myself. I think they're a hot and cold type team, and they're going to carry these two wins into Boston and get the W tonight.
Yeah, and I like you just said, you said how much Crowder had and Avery Bradley. Another little set, Jay Crowder, Avery Bradley, and Marcus Smart combined for 6 on 25 shots. Those 3 guys can't shoot that poorly. You just can't afford it in the playoffs.
Exactly, you can't.
And I get it was on the road. Obviously, Boston is a much better team at home than they are on the road. But, it's like you said, if they had added a guy like Paul George or a guy like Jimmy Butler, this entire series is different. And this playoff run may look better. Boston fans were deceived when they captured the 1 seed. The 1 seed doesn't really mean anything if you don't have a 1 seed type team. And realistically, the Celtics are not a 1 seeded team. They're just not.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I agree. They're not your typical 1 seed. There's been a lot of talk this year about them being one of the worst 1 seeds we've seen in recent time. And another thing the Wizards have done great in this series after, IT kind of went off in the first 2 games was they've limited him. They've made it really tough for him, and they've kind of roughed him up. And that doesn't mean, they've been dirty, but they've made sure he's had to earn every basket. And on defense, they've been going at him too. So I think that's something they need to keep doing, fatigue him. He's a smaller guy, banging with guys that are a foot taller and 100 pounds more than you is going to take a toll.
Yeah. And like you said, they roughed him up. And even still last game, I think he shot 50% and he only missed 1 3. But in the plus and minus, he was minus 30. And Al Horford was minus 36. When those are your 1 and 2 options, they're playing at such a deficit. It just doesn't bode well.
Yeah, one of our writers, Adam, made a great point about what Washington did to Isaiah Thomas, and it was kind of force him into a passer. He can't necessarily see over defenders the same way a 6'3", a 6'4" type guard would. So it kind of struggles a little bit in that area, especially with the shorter arms too. So keep an eye on that Isaiah Thomas matchup with the Wizards and how the defense really focus on him and make someone else beat them.
And one more point, Jay Crowder has been known, and Avery Bradley, both those guys are known as being defensive specialists. I need to see some defensive specialists. Like, I need to see something that shows me that these guys are elite. Because last game, Otto Porter and Bradley Beal both toasted Crowder and Bradley all game. I think Porter missed 1 or 2 shots all game, and Bradley Beal had 29 points.
Yeah,
you gotta limit guys like that, especially the Wizards. Be playing their best basketball, it's when Otto Porter's involved in the offense.
Yeah, no, he definitely is.
Yeah, when he is scoring, it's an entirely different animal to play against.
Yeah, and he's a very good player too. This year he was one of the top 5 guys in 3-point shooting, and like you said, he kind of gives them that third cog that they need because he really does have potential. He's another guy who's going to get paid big bucks this year. And another reason that Washington's having so much success in this series, I think, is the inside battle. Kind of like the Spurs, they're winning the rebounding battle. They won 54-39 in Game 4, and they're also winning points in the paint, 56-38. So that lack of inside presence for the Celtics is really hurting them, and that's something they're going to need to address this offseason.
Yeah, they should have. Guys, I know that the past is the past, but I still don't understand why they didn't trade for a guy like Nerlens Noel, who was pretty much given away to the Dallas. Because just having a big guy like that, then you can take Amir Johnson off the court, who is pretty much useless.
Yeah, but they definitely probably. I would just like to know the game plan of Boston's front office, what they're thinking, and maybe they're looking really, really long-term, and they're looking to really build that long-term dynasty, and that's why they haven't made the moves, but we'll see what happens this offseason in the next few years.
I don't know if you heard too, Nick, they're bringing in Markelle Fultz for an interview tonight, actually. He's going to the Boston facilities. Yeah.
So they do have the Nets pick. They're going to get a great prospect this year. They have plenty of assets. They could even maybe trade back up into that draft if they wanted to and get another high pick. So the Celtics are in a great position, even if they do get knocked out this series. Obviously, there's still plenty of time for them to come back. Who do you like in the series?
Well, as long as Washington doesn't score 26 straight, again, I think Boston has a chance. to at least win tonight. But I'm rolling with Washington in 6.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with my prediction as well. I'm gonna go with the Wizards in 7. I could see it ending in 6. I could see it ending in 7. I just think Washington is the more talented team, and usually in the playoffs, the more talented team tends to win because after 7 games, there's not really many adjustments you can make. You kind of know what the other team's trying to do. They know what you're trying to do. It's about who's playing harder and who's going to make the tough shots. And right now, the Wizards have been able to kind of somewhat contain IT. The Celtics have had no chance at containing John Wall.
No, he's pretty much made it clear to all the doubters that he may be the best point guard in the East.
Do you think John Wall is the second best player in the East?
Second best player? No. Man, that's tough. Because, all right, he may be second best currently, but I think within a year, Giannis will be the second best player in the East, if that's a fair statement. Because I think Giannis has the potential to be that. He's just not there yet.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Giannis has some work to do, a little better understanding of the game. Kind of what John Wall went through earlier on in his career. I would have John Wall as the second best player in the East. I know a lot of people probably wouldn't, but offensively, what he does and what he's able to create out of nothing, and he can turn, like I've said a million times in this podcast, he can turn a made shot into an easy basket. And you just have to deal. His impact on the game is so great, and defensively, it's not like he's a slouch. We've seen him in this series change shots, get those blocks on threes. I just think his all-around impact on a basketball game with his speed is just so great.
And I want to bring up one more point from an article I read off OTG. I think it was 2 days ago from Kyle. I'm not going to even try and pronounce his last name because I'm going to butcher it. Zawaski. I'm going to try anyway. Zawaski or
something along those lines.
Yeah, he made a point how the Wizards have had 3 big runs. I think it was 26-0 and 22-0 and maybe like 15-0, or it might have been 16-0. But they've had these huge runs in this series where Boston hasn't even been able to put 1 point on the board. And when you're playing with that much speed that Washington plays with, they just run teams off the floor, it seems.
Yeah, they have the athletic ability.
It would be the biggest issue for Boston. It's just slowing down the tempo tonight.
Yeah, they have, like I said, they're kind of that hot and cold type team where they can really carry that momentum and push you to another level. They also have plenty of athleticism to get out and run. But that was a great article too, and it just kind of points to the Celtics is like you mentioned it before. They, other than Isaiah Thomas, somebody to create their own shot. A lot of teams have guys in this league where you could at least throw the ball on 3 possessions. He's going to score at least 1 time. And to not be able to score when the other team puts up 26 straight points just puts you in such a tough hole from a mental standpoint and then from the scoreboard standpoint.
And another thing, when Boston is supposed to be this team that relies on their defense, I mean, it makes you also question, where's the defense?
Yeah, they let up 120 points last game, so not much defense there. This is going to be a big game. Obviously, every game 5 is big when the series is tied, but we're going to have a better idea of what's going to happen the rest of the series after tonight because Boston really needs to come out and get with energy and get this win.
And I want to make one more take, too. If the Wizards can finish off the Celtics in 6, I kind of believe that they will be able to win at least 1 game over Cleveland. No matter what for Boston, I think Boston gets swept next round if it's Boston versus Cleveland compared to Wizards Cleveland.
Yeah, no, I would. If I was the Cavs, I would definitely rather see the Celtics. The Wizards' athleticism and John Wall himself just, pose a problem for the Cavs. And it's not something you really want to do when you're going to face Golden State next round, especially if you have to run around for 6 games. I don't think they'd be able to beat the Cavs in a 7-game series, but they'll definitely make it more interesting than the Celtics would.
I agree.
Talking about that brings my next point. Obviously, the Cavs swept Toronto. The Warriors swept Utah. Do we think that these teams are likely to lose before the finals, or, are they just going to keep winning and then when they face each other, we're going to see a great finals matchup, or what do you expect?
Oh, man. I have underestimated the Warriors last round. I kind of thought the Jazz were going to be a better matchup because of the size of Gobert and the defensive prowess they have. Golden State's on another level. I think maybe if they play San Antonio or the Rockets, it won't be a sweep. I can't see Kawhi or Harden being on the wrong side of a sweep. I have a hard time envisioning that. So I think the Warriors definitely lose 1, and I think we just said with Cleveland, it depends on if the Cavs face the Celtics or the Wizards. It's all about matchups at this point.
Yeah, I think the Warriors are regardless going to have the tougher Western Conference. the conference finals matchup, just because, obviously they'll either face the Rockets, who can get really hot 2 games and win 2, or the Spurs, where you have to deal with Kawhi and Gregg Popovich. So I'll go with you. I think that it's more likely the Warriors to lose a game. I still think the Warriors are going to win the finals. I just think their matchup in the next round is going to be tougher.
Yeah, I'm still rolling with the Cavs in the grand scheme of things, but the Warriors definitely, I think, compared to last year, there's no way they're not the favorites. You can't add a guy like Kevin Durant and lose Festus Ezeli and Bogut and Spieth and not be considered favorites, because you still got Kevin Durant.
Yeah, no, they're in fine shape right now, and I think one of the games in the Utah series where Curry and Clay were both kind of cold, and then Kevin Durant just went off
For the 38-point game?
Yeah, that's the problem that you're going to face when you face the Warriors, is that, they have 3 guys that can really go to human torch mode. They could easily drop 40 or 50 on you. That's Curry, Clay, and KD. The chances that all 3 of them are cold on the same night are very unlikely. And as a defensive scheme of things, what are you going to do to stop all 3? There's not really many options if Draymond's hitting shots.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, I didn't pull up the game log, but I can't remember the last time Kevin Durant had a 38-point game. I can't remember the last time he was that aggressive offensively. And when it just, because it makes you forget sometimes with this Warriors team, because some nights Clay only gets like 15 points and Durant only gets 21 or 22, but all 3 of those guys, and even Draymond to a point, they're all 20-plus point guys who can score 30 to 40 on ease on any given night.
Exactly. And it's just like, how do you really stop the Warriors? And in my opinion, I just don't see anybody beating them unless there's some type of injury. And that's with the Cavs playing, LeBron playing at another level. But they're just such a good team offensively and defensively that it's just so much to deal with.
And even though the Cavs have swept, the Pacers and the Raptors, Kyrie and Love haven't had great series. I know Kyrie was better on the back end of the Raptors series, but he hasn't been spectacular yet in these playoffs. It's pretty much just been LeBron with, 30 points in almost every game to this point, triple doubles. It's just been the role players and LeBron facilitating, getting everybody involved.
Yeah, I think if the things stay the same, and even if LeBron's playing at this level, they still won't be the Warriors. I think LeBron even needs to play at another level. And like you mentioned, Kyrie and Love need to play like, all-star starters. They need to go out there and dominate for them to even have a chance against the Warriors with the amount of talent they're going to throw at you.
What are your thoughts on J.R.? Well, I have one more question. What's your thoughts on J.R. Smith so far?
I mean, they need more out of JR. They need him to have, one of those games where he just gets like hot and he can kind of put up a quick 25 for you and kind of help you get that easy win. I mean, his energy's still there, but he does obviously make those boneheaded plays. But he has that potential to kind of, cook randomly.
For me, he just hasn't looked the same since the injury he had earlier this season. He just hasn't.
Yeah, he doesn't have the same pop. I mean, it's also a little bit of age probably catching up to him too. He's starting to get up there. He's over 30. So I think injuries, age, he just doesn't seem to have the same athleticism where he's not – obviously there's always been an issue with him driving more because he was such a good athlete and he just would always pull up. But I think we haven't seen the drives as much.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But it'll be fun to see the Cavs and Warriors, and that's what everybody expects. Maybe we'll get surprised and someone will pull an upset in the conference finals. But as of right now, that's what we're rolling with.
Highly unlikely.
Highly unlikely. I think, unless an injury does happen, and I'm not like that I want to curse anybody or jinx anything, it's not like it's the craziest thing to ever happen if someone were to get hurt and even miss a game or 2.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I prior to this series versus San Antonio and the Nene injury, I kind of had hopes for Houston only because of the offensive talent they have. I kind of just thought that, in stretches where you don't have Curry or Durant on the floor and you have like Lou Will and Eric Gordon, that maybe those guys could generate enough offense versus the Rockets bench to really just the Rockets bench to outpower the Warriors bench. Is what I was trying to say.
Yeah. No, I hope that. I never really believed I thought the Rockets could win, but I always thought they could make it a series. But this Nene injuries hurt them, and then Lou Williams and Eric Gordon kind of cooling down a little bit. They would need everybody to be super hot, hit on all cylinders, and just dominate from 3. They need to hit like 23s a game.
Yeah, and 7-man rotations will not beat the Warriors.
Yeah, so, but that wraps up for today. As always, thanks you guys for listening. Thank you for hopping on, Kory, and enjoy some playoff basketball.